I used to think being called too sensitive was an insult. Now, sometimes, I wonder if it was the only true thing she ever said to me. The first time I met her, I was changing the flickering light in the break room, the one that buzzed just enough to drive everyone mad, but not enough for anyone to fix. The shop smelled like motor oil and coffee that had been reheated too many times. She walked in with a folder tucked under her arm, heels clicking sharp against the concrete floor, the kind of sound that made you straighten up without realizing it. Her name was Elena. She was one of the consultants the company brought in for the expansion project, older, experienced, confident in the way people are when they've had to be. I remember she paused at the door, eyes squinting toward the bad light, then toward me on the stepladder. "Careful," she said, voice calm but clipped. "If you fall, I don't have time to file the report." I laughed. She didn't. Then, maybe out of politeness, maybe pity, the corner of her mouth softened. That almost smile hit harder than the joke ever could. When I climbed down, she was standing closer than before. She smelled faintly of cedar wood and paper, like someone who reads old books and doesn't tell you what kind. She reached out and brushed dust off my shoulder, just a quick, efficient motion, and said, "You missed a spot." Her tone was dry, but her hand lingered for half a second longer than necessary. Just half a second, but I felt it all night. After that, we kept crossing paths. She came in early, always with black coffee and no small talk. I'd be setting up tools, pretending not to notice how she leaned over blueprints like she was studying a map out of her own past. She had that kind of focus, the kind that made silence around her feel charged. Once, during a rainstorm, the power went out. The shop fell into that strange half-darkness where sound carries differently. I found her near the window, arms crossed, watching the rain trace crooked lines down the glass. I offered her my flashlight. "You always this prepared?" she asked. "Just sensitive," I said, trying to make it sound like a joke. She gave a small exhale, almost a laugh, almost not. "That's not a bad thing," she said quietly. "People don't notice enough." And for a second, I thought she meant me. After that night, I caught myself doing small, stupid things, making sure her chair wasn't under the vent, fixing the coffee machine before she arrived, noticing the way she'd pause before speaking, as if weighing every word. She didn't flirt. She didn't have to. The space between us was already full of something unnamed. One afternoon, she dropped a pen. When I bent to pick it up, our hands touched, lightly, by accident. She pulled back fast, muttered, "Sorry," and turned away. But her breath caught. I heard it. Later, when I got home, that sound wouldn't leave me. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that I was imagining the current, the way the air seemed to shift when she entered a room. But the truth is, it wasn't what she said that got to me. It was everything she didn't. The next morning, she walked past me without a word, her heels clicking sharp again, eyes fixed ahead. For a heartbeat, I almost said something. Anything. Just to pull her back into that half second of shared silence we'd had before. But I didn't. And ever since, I've been wondering if she even remembers that moment, or if it's only me replaying it like some song no one else can hear. Because now, when I think about her calling me too sensitive, I can't help but wish she'd meant it, and that she still cared enough to say it again. The next week, she asked me for help. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet, offhand request as she stood by the storage cabinet, flipping through a stack of old invoices. "Can you carry this box to the conference room?" she said without looking at me. The box wasn't that heavy, but I said sure anyway. The office was quieter than usual, that kind of quiet that made every sound feel amplified. Her pen tapping, my footsteps, the soft hum of the ceiling fan. She walked ahead of me, crisp and composed as always, but I noticed the slightest drag in her gait. Not tired, more like someone holding herself together. When we reached the conference room, she set her folder down and exhaled, a long, steady breath that sounded like it had been waiting all morning to come out. "You can just leave it there," she said. But I didn't leave right away. She rubbed her temples, eyes closed, and for the first time, she looked, not older, exactly, but human. The confident woman who commanded every meeting suddenly seemed small in the dim light. Her hands trembled slightly as she took off her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. I should have left. Instead, I said softly, "Rough day?" Her eyes opened, sharp for a second, then softened when she saw it was me. "They all are," she said, trying to sound light. But the laugh that followed fell apart halfway through. There was a pause, long enough for me to notice the details I'd been trying not to. The faint smudge of ink on her wrist, the tired curve of her mouth, the silver chain she always wore under her blouse. "Sorry," she said after a moment, her tone gentler. "You didn't sign up for this kind of conversation." "I don't mind," I said. "I like listening." That made her look up, really look this time. Her gaze lingered, cautious but searching, like she was deciding if that was a safe thing to hear. "Listening can be dangerous," she said quietly. I smiled. "So can not saying what you mean." Something flickered in her expression then, something between surprise and recognition. She glanced toward the window, pretending to check the rain outside, but her voice came lower. "You're too young to think like that." "Too sensitive, too young," I shrugged. "You've got a list." That made her laugh, really laugh, the kind that starts small and then escapes before she can stop it. It was short, unguarded, and maybe that's why it felt like something I shouldn't have heard. She turned back to the table, busying herself with the papers, pretending nothing had happened. But her hand brushed mine when she reached for the pen. Not by accident, not entirely. Neither of us moved for a second. Then she pulled back, composed again. "You should get back to work," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. As I walked out, I caught her reflection in the glass wall, standing still, fingertips pressed to her lips, as if testing the shape of her own silence. And I realized then, it wasn't what she said that drew me in. It was everything she kept just barely from saying. It was a Thursday night, long after everyone else had gone home. The storm outside had started as a whisper and built into a restless percussion on the windows. I was still at my desk, pretending to finish reports I'd already done, when I saw her light still on through the glass wall of her office. She was standing by the window, arms folded, watching the rain. Her jacket hung over the back of the chair, and the lamp threw a warm circle of light around her. Everything else, the dark halls, the empty desks, made her look like the last thought the building was holding on to. I don't know why I knocked. Maybe I wanted to say something, or maybe I just wanted her to see I was still there. "Still working?" I asked, stepping inside. She smiled faintly without turning. "Trying to." The storm's louder than my concentration. Her tone was lighter than before, not playful, exactly, but softer. She gestured toward the spare chair. "Sit. You look as restless as the weather." I sat, and for a while, neither of us spoke. The rain filled the silence. It felt safe. Then she sighed and said, "You ever wonder if some decisions follow you longer than they should?" I didn't answer right away. Her reflection in the glass looked almost transparent, a double image. The woman she showed the world, and the one asking questions into the dark. "I think they do," I said finally. "But maybe they follow you because they still want to be undone." She turned then, slowly, and the look she gave me was careful, like she'd heard something she shouldn't have liked. "You sound older than you are," she said, a little too firmly. I smiled. "And you sound like someone who's tired of pretending not to feel things." That froze her. The thunder rolled then, long and heavy. Her hand went to the table, fingertips brushing against a folder, just something to hold on to. I thought she'd tell me to leave. Instead, she whispered, "You shouldn't say things like that." "I know." Another silence, longer this time. The kind that bends between people. Her phone buzzed on the desk, breaking it. A name flashed on the screen, Mark. She turned it face down, but not before I caught the tightness in her jaw. "Ex-husband." I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine. "He calls when he forgets why we stopped talking." I didn't push. I just nodded. When she finally looked up again, something in her face had shifted, not open, not closed, but suspended. She leaned forward a little, elbows on the desk. The air felt too still. "You should go before the roads flood," she said, but her voice wavered. "I don't mind staying." She stared at me then, really stared, as if she was about to say something, confess something, anything. Her lips parted, and then she stopped. Instead, She reached for the lamp and switched it off. The room fell into half-darkness. "Good night," she said. I stood there a moment longer, hearing the storm, her breathing, my pulse. All the things words couldn't touch. And when I finally left, I could still feel the space between us, alive with everything that almost happened but didn't. The next morning, the air between us had changed. We didn't talk about the storm or the near moment that hung like static in the space between us. But silence has a way of keeping score, and it followed us through the day, across hallways, through short conversations, into every unfinished glance. By evening, I was still there, pretending to sort cables near her office while she worked through a pile of documents she wasn't really reading. Her pen stopped moving every few minutes. I could tell her mind was somewhere else, probably in that half-dark room, replaying what didn't happen. When she finally looked up, our eyes met. "Come in," she said quietly. "You're making me nervous standing there." I stepped inside. The air felt heavy, thick with everything we hadn't said. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "You've been different lately," she said. "So have you." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. "That's not an answer. It's not a question." She exhaled, sharp and tired. "What are we doing, really?" I didn't know if she was asking me or herself. I didn't even know how to answer. The truth was, I didn't know what this was, the ache I felt when she wasn't around, the way her silence filled entire rooms, the heat under every harmless exchange. "I don't know," I said finally. "But it feels like something we're both pretending not to feel." Her eyes softened, and for a second, she looked younger, not in age, but in openness. "You think this is simple?" she said. "You think feelings don't have consequences at my age?" "No," I said. "I just think not having them does." That made her look away. She stood, walked to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, a ghost of composure. "I can't afford this," she whispered. You can still start over." "I can't." She sounded more tired than angry. It hit me harder than any rejection could have. "I'm not trying to make you lose anything," I said softly. "I just can't pretend anymore." She turned back to me, eyes wet but steady. "You don't understand," she said. "If I let this mean something, it'll undo everything I've built." For a moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the office lights, the faint sound of rain outside, it all blurred into a quiet that felt too loud. Then she took a step closer, close enough that I could see the tiny scar near her lip, the way her breathing quickened. Her voice came out almost a whisper. "Don't make me feel young again," she said. "Please. I don't think I could survive it twice." The words landed like a confession and a warning at once. I wanted to reach for her, to say something that could make sense of it, but she was already walking past me, heading for the door. Her perfume lingered. The space she left behind felt colder than before. And for the first time, I realized silence wasn't distance. It was everything she didn't have the strength to say. She didn't come in for 2 days. The first morning, her desk stayed empty, coffee cup gone, papers stacked too neatly. The chair turned toward the window like it had been waiting for her to return. By the second day, I stopped pretending not to notice. When she finally showed up, she looked quieter. Not sick, not sad, just like someone who'd been thinking too long and too hard about something she couldn't name. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Long week?" I asked carefully. "Longer than that," she said, dropping her bag on the table. She got right to work, shuffling papers, pretending busyness could smooth out whatever was trembling underneath. But halfway through the afternoon, she called me into her office. "I need your help moving something," she said. It turned out to be an old cabinet, heavy and stubborn. We had to empty it first: binders, boxes, old files. One of the boxes slipped from my hands and burst open across the floor. Folders, receipts, photos scattered everywhere. "I'm sorry," I said, crouching to gather them. "It's fine," she murmured, kneeling beside me. We worked in silence until a small, worn envelope slid out from under a folder. She froze when she saw it. Her hand hovered, hesitant. Then she picked it up, turning it over slowly. There was no address, just a single name written in faded blue ink: Daniel. She didn't open it right away, just stared at it like it had been waiting for her in the dark all this time. I didn't know you had a son, I said quietly before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked up. For a second, I thought she'd be angry. Instead, she just gave a small, brittle laugh. I don't. Not anymore. The air thinned. She sat back against the cabinet, the envelope still in her hand. He wasn't mine. Not by blood. He was my fiancé's from his first marriage. I helped raise him for 6 years. Then they both left. A car accident. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. I packed all this away when I moved here, she went on. I thought I'd buried it. Her voice cracked, just barely. You remind me of him sometimes. That last sentence broke something open inside me, quietly, like the sound of a hinge giving way. How? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. Not in how you look. In how you care. You notice small things. He used to do that. The storm outside, always there, somehow, began again, tapping faintly against the window. I wanted to say something that could hold her pain without breaking it. Instead, I just reached down, gently brushing the dust off a photograph of a little boy holding a kite. I handed it to her. Her fingers trembled as she took it, brushing mine for the briefest moment. Then she whispered, almost to herself, maybe that's why this feels wrong. It's not you I see. It's what I lost. She stood, placed the envelope back in the box, and straightened her jacket. Composed again, or trying to be. But before leaving, she paused at the door, eyes still wet. You shouldn't have to carry someone else's ghosts, she said. I watched her go, feeling the truth of it sink like a slow weight in my chest. Because by then, it wasn't just her ghosts I was carrying. It was mine too. It happened on a Sunday. The shop was closed, but I came in anyway. Habit, maybe, or hope. The air was still, the faint hum of machines sleeping. I was halfway through fixing a broken lamp when I heard the soft sound of heels on concrete. She stood by the doorway, holding 2 paper cups. I thought you'd be here, she said, voice low. I blinked, surprised. You're not supposed to be working today. Neither are you. Her smile was tired, but there, real, not professional. She set one of the cups on the table. Peace offering, she said. Black coffee. I remember. I nodded, taking it, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. For a while, we just stood there, drinking in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy with things already understood. Finally, she said, I've been unfair to you. I looked up, and she was staring at the floor, hands clasped tight. You've done nothing wrong, but I kept pushing you away. Because I knew if I didn't, I'd stop being who I'm supposed to be. Her voice trembled, just once. I don't want to be someone you're supposed to be, I said quietly. I just want to be someone you can be honest with. She exhaled, long and shaky. That's the thing, she said. You make honesty feel dangerous. I smiled faintly. And you make silence feel like a conversation. That drew her eyes back to mine. For the first time, neither of us looked away. The distance we'd built, all the hesitations, all the careful pretending, just thinned. She set her cup down, hands trembling slightly. I can't promise anything, she said. I don't even know what this is. You don't have to name it, I said. We're already in it. A tear escaped before she could stop it. She didn't wipe it away, maybe too tired to hide anymore. I stepped closer, slow enough for her to move if she wanted. She didn't. For a moment, the world shrank to the sound of her breathing. Then she reached up, not to kiss me, not to pull me in, but to rest her forehead against mine. A quiet, human touch. Fragile, steady, real. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't neat. It just was. We stayed like that for a while, 2 people caught between grief and something that felt like forgiveness. Her hand found mine, fingers cold but unresisting. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Then don't, I said. Just stay. She let out a small, broken laugh, the kind that sounded like relief disguised as surrender. Outside, the sky was clearing, the storm finally spent. Lights spilled through the window, touching the edge of her hair like a quiet benediction. When she finally stepped back, her eyes were calmer, still sad, still uncertain, but no longer running. Whatever we were, whatever we might become, it didn't need to be defined. It just needed to exist, softly, honestly, here. And for once, silence didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the beginning neither of us had dared to name. It's been months since that Sunday. The world didn't collapse. The shop didn't gossip. Nothing dramatic happened. She didn't quit, and I didn't leave. Life just continued, the way it does when something deep shifts under the surface but doesn't announce itself. We never spoke about that night again. We didn't have to. Some mornings, she'd nod at me across the floor, that same faint smile she used to hide behind. Other days, we'd talk about meaningless things, deadlines, weather, coffee that tasted like burnt hope. But between all that ordinary noise, there was something different now. A gentleness. A kind of quiet understanding that didn't need naming. She started laughing again, small, cautious at first, then easier. Not with everyone, but sometimes with me. And I learned to stop trying to read her silences like confessions. Sometimes silence isn't hiding anything. Sometimes it's just peace. Once, weeks later, I found a note on my desk. No name, just her handwriting, small, deliberate. You were right. It's not wrong to feel. It's just hard to stay. I didn't reply. I just kept the note. It's folded now, worn at the corners, living in the inside pocket of my jacket, like a secret that doesn't hurt anymore. I still see her, of course. She still smells like cedar and ink. She still looks at things like she's seeing too much and saying too little. But now, when our eyes meet, there's no tension, just recognition. We both know what almost happened, what didn't, and what somehow did. She taught me that love isn't always a story with a confession or a kiss. Sometimes it's just the moment you stop hiding, even for a breath, and let yourself be known. And maybe that's enough. I don't think she'll ever call me too sensitive again. Maybe she doesn't need to. Because what I used to take as weakness, all the noticing, the waiting, the wanting, is the very thing that let me see her clearly when no one else did. I used to think sensitivity meant softness. Now I know it means staying open, even when it hurts. That's what she gave me. Not a love story. A mirror. If she ever thinks of me, I hope it's not with regret. I hope it's the quiet kind of memory, the kind that hums beneath the noise of everyday life. Because that's how I think of her. Not as a mistake or a mischance, but as proof that two people can meet halfway between ruin and grace, and still walk away more whole than they began. So yeah, maybe I was too sensitive, but maybe that's exactly why I'll never forget her. Sparkles, if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?